Good morning and welcome, Mr. Kaushik Chakraborty, for our interview with Construction World. For our viewers, Kaushik has more than 28 years of experience holding senior management positions in international sales and business development across multiple industries, including government, defense, and emergency services, utilities, transportation, and geospatial. He joined Bentley in 2015 and is focused on growing Bentley's breadth of geospatial and engineering solutions to accelerate project delivery and improve asset performance for the infrastructure that sustains our economy and environment. Prior to joining Bentley, Kaushik was vice president at the Hexagon Group and served in leadership roles at both Intergraph and Leica Geosystems in Asia Pacific and EMEA regions. He holds a master's degree in electrical engineering and has earned certificates in management and leadership. Welcome, Kaushik.
Thank you, Pratap, for the very kind introduction.
So we are connecting with you back again after 2 years, and let me go flashback into that time when you mentioned that BIM Advancement Academy, a joint initiative by Bentley and Mahametro, where users learn to apply BIM methodologies and use of Bentley software. How has this done? And can you just update us on that?
Yeah. So that the Advancement Academy was an integral part of the design construction and the whole, I would say, digital transformation and thought leadership of the leadership team at the Mahametro agency, right? And they collaborated and we collaborated with them. They collaborated with Bentley, having seen some of the values of delivering such transformation services. We had experiences with doing that, and we're still doing that with the UK government around the major rail infrastructure projects in the UK, right? That actually went very well. It was done to kind of accelerate development and progress in that one project, the Nagpur Metro project. A lot of those principles were then brought over into the Pune Metro. As I think the pandemic kind of took some impact on physical spaces and physical activity, as you can imagine, but the principles and the underlying benefits it sparked a new way of thinking in a lot of the ecosystem, right? Not just the Mahametro users and the officers employed by the agency, but everybody in the ecosystem to think differently, right? We are building a metro. How can we do it more effectively? What is the use of digital technologies? To use an example, right? 20 years ago or 15 years ago, we all used typewriters and we wrote a letter. Then came the PC and we wrote letters on the PC. Today you have, enterprise systems like Office 365. And you can use that just to type a letter like you use on a typewriter, but you can use that for much more, right? The same system is today used. We look at education, right? Look at the impact of the pandemic. If we didn't have systems like Office 365 or Google Docs, children who's doing home-based learning, right? Where you see in real time, right? 3 different people are collaborating on a document for a project submission. The teacher is marking and assessing them at the same time. This is evolution of what technology brings to the world, right? You can use it. You can use something new to do what, the way old methodology, or you can use it to transform and do it differently. And I think this is the benefit that BIM Advancement Academy had in bringing ideas. It wasn't about products. It wasn't about software. It was about how you get new processes in and how you upskill people so that the technology is actually useful, right? Technology is a tool, but unless you match it with processes and people transformation, it doesn't really add to the dimensions of progress.
And we spoke to a couple of, including the managing director of Mahametro, and they were very, very passionate about what they managed to do with the 5D and 6D kind of arrangement that they were able to bring to the fore. I think with your offerings and with their own deployment of their own imagination, they were able to bring together services which they are very proud of right now.
Yes, and we are equally proud. And there is enough public domain information which we have published and they have published in other public domain articles, newsletters, and magazines And they've talked about the real world benefits, right? This isn't just conceptual benefits. There's real money ROI. There is people ROI. There is value propositions which will sustain. And our hope is that they serve as a lighthouse to the Ministry of Railways, the National High Speed Rail Commission committee, and other metros to say, okay, you don't have to do exactly what they did, but look at some of the benefits they derived, and let's take even 10% adoption of those is 10% improvement.
So speaking about ROI, I realize that only in mega scale projects or reasonably high scale projects like infrastructure, like metro, and so others, the ROI is very, very definite in terms of the percentage value that we talk about, because otherwise, when we spread it across to any small project, there is a threshold level at which this begins to deliver ROI. And I think that's where people confuse the advantages, that the advantages of digital are not coming forth. Probably your project is just too small. So is there a threshold level at which people ought to consider this, or are there options for smaller projects?
So it depends on what exactly what is the definition of small, right? Let's remember something. When we talk of big project, small project, you can also say, is there a minimum? A lot of people ask, is there a minimum size of project below which I should not do BIM, for example, right? It's always relative. Let me turn that around in a way. If you ask any asset owner or project owner, what is your number one challenge? Whether they are doing one single building, or they're building an airport, or they're building a power plant, or they're building a rail system. Every owner wants on budget, on time, right? Today, we also see a push for quality, right? Why quality? Because with climate change, with COVID-19, time scales are being crunched, right? So for 2 years, if construction was slow or stopped to a large extent, I don't think everybody's going to say, okay, now next year's construction will go back to normal. So we just have lost 2 years. Everybody will say, can we do it faster? Now, the risk of doing everything faster is if you don't consider that, hey, we've got to take into consideration the impacts of weather, the impacts of climate change, and the new, a lot of new thought leadership is going on into India, especially via the NDMA, into resilience, right? Building resilient infrastructure, right? We don't want to just build so that we can show something, and then after 10 years, in things, inadvertently, that the quality suffers, right? So when you crunch all of that, think about the aspect of small or big. The scale of implementation and the scale of adoption of technology is what is different, I would say, right? Maybe what a Mahametro did is not all required for a single building, but where we do see a lot of ROI even for small projects, right? So we have users, who are using our integrated construction project control software, right? So recently, Bentley was fortunate enough to acquire an Indian software construction project control software company out of Chennai called Nadi Technologies, and integrate that into our construction work in progress solution. And they have a lot of users who've been using systems for even single building, right? 12 apartment premium building complex, right? Now that's not a major infrastructure, but these users have gained 15 to 20% efficiencies. Why? Because we were able to give them a solution which integrated the best of CAD or BIM, right? The modeling from a design perspective, but then combine that with, what is my day-to-day schedule, my cost, and very importantly, my raw materials, right? Now, I remember as a child, one very common scenario, right? Whenever a building was built or something was being built, is somebody would come in, the sand or the reti bags would come and be deposited, bricks would be deposited, steel, iron would be deposited, cement would be deposited, and they would just sit there for 2 to 3 months, right? A genset would come in and sit for a month. That's cost. It's just burning cash, right? But what project control solutions can do, construction management software can do, is tell you, hey, okay, this part of the project or this part of construction will most likely start on X week. right? Days are difficult to predict. I mean, that's the aim, but let's say a week, right? So if you can get materials just in time, now, if you can think now, it's a scale of one building, that saving could be X. If you extend that to a campus, it could be Y. Extend that to a metro, like Delhi metro, 100 kilometers long, it's huge, right? But unless we start small, remember, there's a very famous saying, right? A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. We have to do the first step. Otherwise, we are not going to get on the journey. So whether a project is small or big, we think, in our belief, that there is always an ROI of going digital, of doing digital transformation, looking at effective ways to crunch time and deliver on time, on budget. There's always a benefit of that. So project controls, construction work in progress management, better 3D modeling, better design, right? If you do better design, if you have clash detection done effectively, effective design review during design, however small a project, you are always going to see benefits in the field. Otherwise, what happened traditionally? Somebody would design, they would print a map, print a design file and send it to the field, right? During construction, they would see, oh, this can't happen, right? Because nobody told us that, this would happen. I mean, I remember, 2 years ago or 3 years ago at Year in Infrastructure, we had a submission from L&T, for one of the DFCC projects. And they talked about a very small part of the project where they had done, unfortunately for that part, just a 2D model, right? When they went to the field, they realized that the construction had to be 30 foot above the ground. And that changed everything, right? The perspective of not having the elevation or the real context of what was there. So then they had to go back, redo the design, and that cost a few weeks of time. So people, materials, all of that, there was a cost overrun because they didn't do what I would call true BIM-based design, taking into consideration the real world context, right? So this is where even in small projects, right, benefits are always there. It's just the scale of the benefit, I think, which makes a difference. I hope that gives a satisfactory response.
Yeah, so I think the waste of time, the waste of material, I mean, all this is, labor, it's all going to affect your total ROI in any case. So when you begin, if you have all this planned out in control, then the chances of that happening are recede considerably, and that itself is an ROI, actually speaking. So for infra projects, you see this becoming like a mandated kind of a thing. Do you think for building projects going forward, should these be mandated? I mean, is that, as you see in the Western world, as you developed world, how has this transition taken place?
Before I answer that, whether things should be mandated for buildings or infrastructure projects, let's talk about, what is happening in the world of, I would say, infrastructure BIM, or how is BIM evolving, right? Because we can look at where we are technology-wise, and then mirror it to where we are from a process and a people perspective, and then what the role of, at the end of the day, mandates only happen from government, right? And where does that make sense? And we've also got to remember, right? India is a federal democracy. The word mandate has a lot of positive as well as negative connotations, right? And we have to respect that we are a federal nation, right? So, for example, you talked about some nations, right? These are nations like Singapore, like the UK, which are putting a lot of mandates in place to drive, digital innovation, right? But many nations which are similar to India, federal democracies, have different, challenges of what's a state subject versus what's a federal subject, and all of this. But that's irrelevant, right? Whether something is a mandate or not. I think value is value, right? So let's look at the benefits of adopting what traditionally people have referred to as BIM. Let me dispel a few myths about why I think that a lot of people have become disillusioned with the word BIM, right? And what we see as the evolution of infrastructure in the future, as everybody's starting to talk about digital twins, right? And what that means. So the first and foremost topic I'd like to hit upon is or address is, there was a global research paper published by McKinsey called "The Next Normal in Construction." Right, it's available on in their public domain information sites, and what they talk about is that the construction industry is emphasizing a lot of R&D and that companies are investing a lot more in technology and digital transformation across the world as they are, thinking of the next phase of projects post COVID-19 pandemic. So the global R&D spending by the top 2,500 construction companies, according to McKinsey, has grown by 77% since 2013. So that's a huge, now if you think about construction being, McKinsey reported back in 2016 that construction is one of the most under-digitalized industries in the world. So, but we've also seen good progress, I think, since 2013. I think since then, McKinsey has also seen progress, right? The good news is that the pandemic is actually accelerating things, right? Because projects, people are waiting, right? So it's like water behind a flood, behind the dam. It's waiting to get out, right? And it's going to rush. And we have to seize that opportunity of what do we do next. So, when we talk about BIM, right? BIM, unfortunately, has become synonymous with 3D building models. And it is anything but 3D building models. 3D building models is a component of BIM. But what BIM is, it's a methodology, it's a process of integrating all the stakeholders in a project, right? So you have the developers, you have consultants, you have contractors, GCs, PMCs, all of them working together in a transparent, seamless, non-siloed approach, right? So everybody working in a project considers themselves to be an equal stakeholder looking at information across the project, right? Not that, hey, you are just doing A, you just focus on A, right? It's, goes back to when we were children, we read that, Aesop's fable of 4 blind men and an elephant, right? That is the promise which BIM gave. And unfortunately, I think it has become in a way synonymous. It's not, but it has become synonymous with 3D models. And the ROIs have been addressed mostly in the design phase. Let's mirror that with the real world scenario of, of a project and what we see in reading information from, the McKinseys and the Deloittes and the KPMGs, and the research they have done is that about 80% of a project life cycle, the costs can be attributed and you look at 100% cost allocation of an infrastructure asset, 80% is in the operations and maintenance phase, right? Post-construction handover. Design is between 3 and 5%. Construction is between 15 and 20%, right? What does everybody obsess about in the BIM phase is that 3 to 5%, the design. But that's a very small part, right? It's the old, I think this is what we see changing in the acceleration faster in some parts of the world where they're mandating BIM and digital twin, is that they're taking an OpEx-based approach and a life cycle-based approach to projects, rather than what's my upfront capital expenditure? What do I see today? And how do we move beyond the baad ka baad mein sochenge? But think about, no, we are doing this. It's going to be around for the next 100 years. I have to make decisions today which support, whoever is there in 10 years from today and is running this, right? I built an airport. Let me make sure that after 10 years, things are there. Now, we see why is this important? Look at what's happening with airports in India, right? They are being handed over from one operator to the next operator. Now, imagine if they don't have all the information in a cohesive, transparent manner to be handed over to the next operator. What do they have to do? They'll have to spend a lot of money redoing and rebuilding designs of, okay, why is this the way it is? Where are the pipes? Where is the mechanical systems? Where are the electrical systems, right? Now, we hope that it's been done in a very, in a very process-driven methodology. So what we feel is, so BIM was all about bringing predictability and reliability into project planning and delivery, right? And that's what the promise of BIM was. And I think if done correctly, that's what it delivered, right? When we look at the 4D, 5D BIM, mandate which Mahametro put through, I think they succeeded, right? We have, it's not anecdotal. We have public domain information released by them about the savings, right? They estimate that a minimum 15% saving in the overall life cycle of availability of the asset. Savings during operations to be exceeded, beyond $100 million.
So did they incorporate digital twin aspects there? for the
To some extent, yes, right? So a digital twin aspect starts with the creation of a very comprehensive 3D model, right? It then perpetuates that model through every phase of the project, right? The aim, what we see unfortunately happen is somebody creates a model and they create 2D sheets, they take it to construction, they do all the changes on the field on a piece of paper. It's never perpetuated back into the design, right? So you have a as designed, you have as built, and then you have as operated. And the three don't talk. Now, a digital twin is a representation which maps your as designed, as built, and as operated in a single model with the reference of time. So it'll tell you, hey, this is how I was designed. This is how I was constructed. This is how I am operating. It's like the human body, right? We can see how we were as a 5-year-old. We know how we were as 20-year-old, and unfortunately, what we are when we are 50 years old, right? So think of that, right? So, and we are, and so the whole asset world of digital twins is going to that. Integrate to that whole concept of integration. So digital twins are 3D models with the reference of time, integrated with other systems, GIS systems, SCADA systems, other IT systems, ERP systems, and more IoT sensor information, right? Today, you're operating buildings, right? And when we're operating buildings, we are putting sensors in, right? Sensors to say, okay, there's nobody here, switch off the light. There is nobody there, turn down the AC, right? Turn off the AC, right? All of these, integrating all of this into that one model makes it a twin. A twin is a real world, it's like it's a real living replica of the asset, right? Versus a BIM model is a static model of what was designed.
So here I want to just clarify that, those projects which did not follow BIM, right, at the institution at the time of design, but later on now they are going to perpetuate because they are institutional assets. Now, if somebody gets in a digital twin exercise going, at least moving forward, you can convert all your paper plans into.
Yes. So, so Bentley's digital twin platform, the iTwin platform, what we have done is we have taken the iTwin platform. It's an open source. So we believe that the digital twin story is not about software or just technology. It's about an ecosystem. It's about everybody collaborating and working. That's why we've really focused and emphasized on building an open. We believe in open. A large part of it is even open sourced on GitHub. But what we want is other industry players to collaborate with us. And we are seeing a lot of collaboration, right? With Microsoft, with Siemens, with Atos, many other companies, and a company like Topcon. But we are also seeing collaborations with large IT companies today, right? As they build solutions for their end users. So for us, it's all about building a platform and an ecosystem to better advance, and address our mission of advancing infrastructure, right? It's not about us and our software only. That's one part of it, but we want true outcomes for our users. We want truly to advance and help people build and maintain their infrastructure assets. So, we firmly believe that taking all this, all the true digital twin information, it will evolve with inputs and time, and then asset managers will be able to gain true insights, which they can, use to improve their capital planning, right? Planning for the next project. How much capital outlay will I have on the CapEx and OpEx phase? And how do I better maintain my facilities going ahead, right? I think the infrastructure asset industry suffers to some extent like we do as humans, right? When we are young, we don't take care of our health. We think, we are fine, we are young, nothing's going to happen. And as the 30s come in, then you start getting worried. And in the 40s, you start panicking. And in the 50s, you really start to get healthy again, right? because then you want to reverse the damage you've done for all those years, right?
And you need a digital twin at 50.
Yes. So I think of it, there's parallels to draw here, right? Is that if you think ahead, for I as an example, right? If I had known today what the impacts of a few decisions about health would have been 20 years ago, would have probably had different outcomes, right? So, and that's what the digital twin technology can do for infrastructure asset owners. It can give them a look to the future and say, hey, what can happen? What are the insights we can provide you? And insights not just for your project, but we can take insights from everything else And why is this happening today? What makes it possible today? One is the evolution of cloud computing, right? So cloud computing has made it easy for us, much easier to crunch and do a lot of high-powered computing, which traditionally would have taken a lot of PCs or high-end machines and a lot of expensive physical assets to do. IoT sensors, they've really become democratized. They've become very inexpensive, easily available. Local productions have happened, especially in emerging markets, and putting all this together, and plus the availability of IT trained resources and engineers, especially in our part of the world, right? We have no dearth of well qualified, well trained people, right? If you look at all the Indian IT companies running major infrastructure projects for the Western world, most of them have people sitting in India, right? So the talent is there. Yeah. We have no dearth of good talent, and it's just giving them the opportunity to enhance their skills and do new and better things. So I think this is very exciting and interesting times for the future generations to come.
How are you seeing the trends emerging from India in terms of inquiries, like as COVID has hit and obviously digital automation, all these things are now becoming more and more important. How are you seeing the trends?
Trends are positive. Our mission has stayed steadfast, right? As Bentley has evolved for so many years. Our mission is to provide innovative software and services for professionals who design, build, and operate the world's infrastructure, right? So we stay very steadfast on that mission. And our goal is to go and help educate, create thought leadership, educate the industry to what is possible, right? The possibilities are endless. But where can we start, right? The first question you asked about is it relevant to a small project versus a big project? It's always scale. Everything can be better, right? So our goal is to help our users advance in a responsible and environmental friendly way. We are seeing positive movement in the market for sure. We see a lot of interest growing from users who want to better visualize their projects. They want to see, people are crying out for transparency, right? Especially owners. They don't know what's happening in their projects, right? And in today's day and age, not using information to make decisions is no longer an excuse, right? The world of technology, so there is no dearth of technology, and technology is no longer a problem. We have technology to solve most human issues. It's how do we institute processes to use that technology? So people want to see an integrated approach to delivering projects successfully, right? So construction management, work in progress, project controls, on a daily basis. We have users who on a daily basis want to see the CEO and the chairman have a dashboard where they can see, okay, how much was supposed to be done today, at what cost, and how much was done. And we can provide them that information, right? And there are users who've been doing this for 2 to 3 years, and they're very happy. So again, and in India, right? And these are not very large projects. These are relatively small building campus projects, right? These are road highway projects. So everything is possible. We are seeing more information, more engagement with the market. Project controls is fast being recognized as something we really need to focus on, so that projects can be delivered on time and on budget. The importance of asset reliability solutions is increasing, right? We have a whole portfolio of asset reliability and asset management solutions which work within the context of an enterprise or IT-based enterprise asset management solution. That is definitely on the rise, especially in the energy, utilities, and the rail sector. And with the evolution in acceptance of cloud, we believe that we are well poised to support the Indian marketplace with localized solutions for localized problems, right? So I think to summarize, I am excited to see what happens in 2022 and beyond, right? As as we have to come out of this pandemic and learn to live with what it is, but then learn that we just can't go back to doing things the way we used to do. We have to change.
Kaushik, now the time seems to be very apt in the sense that there is regulatory environment which is supporting the fact that projects need to be completed in time, because they offer, on one hand, infrastructure projects get bonuses and the other real estate projects get penalties.
Mhm.
So, so from the big and the small, all places they need, the environment seems to be, what roadblocks are you seeing then? Because these are situational evolution. The evolution has reached a point where this is at an inflection point.
Yes. So the traditional roadblocks, let's talk of traditional, right? There's a lot of change happening of late, and any impact of any decisions or changes takes a little bit of time to actually flow down into the projects, right? But the traditional roadblocks have been, I think I already mentioned this, right? That the Indian, and it's not just India, right? It's the emerging markets have viewed technology investment, it's perceived as a cost, not as a value-based ROI, right? This has been a major, if you look at, I don't know where, I think maybe it was Gartner or one of the IT research firms, which many years back has published, and they continue to harness on that a lot more, is what percentage of project spending is IT. And they look at Europe, they look at North America, they look at Latin America, Asia, India, right? And you will see that traditionally we've had IT being a very, very, very small percentage of our overall project outlay, right? It's perceived as a cost. Slowly that mindset is changing to know I can use technology to drive efficiency and drive an ROI, both, not just for the owner. I think the change coming today is also the people delivering, the contractors, the engineering companies, right? They are starting to ask questions about how can I, get more profitability. You have large companies who are doing a lot of projects, and their profitability is not where they want it to be, right? So they want to be more profitable. Now, there's many ways to improve profitability. One is improve price, right? One is improved quality of the quality of the project delivery, right? Where use information more. So that realization is coming in today, and I think so that roadblock slowly. I'm confident that we are seeing slow and steady progress in getting rid of that roadblock. Now, mandates, regulatory changes in the government always accelerate these changes, right? But they're not the only answer. The government mandate is not the answer to everything, right? And we tend to think that, okay, for something to happen, government has to mandate, but then real change happens. It's like, a parent and a child. The child doesn't always change when the parent shouts at them, right? Then when the day that self-realization comes that I will profit more, in whatever way I will advance and to be more effective, when we do things differently, that's when change is happening. And a lot of the Indian companies we work with today, we are seeing that they are starting to, be more awake to these possibilities going ahead.
There's another compelling reason, because now the developers, who are a lot of them from overseas investors, so for instance, in REITs that they are investing, they would like assets which have this kind of a perpetual, O&M kind of a asset where you can monitor all this, and they want ROI. So I think going forward, these stocks which are listed, those ones which have these kind of assets backing them with digital assets, will definitely have better value, because they know that the sustenance, the O&M, etc., will be
absolutely right. So today, in one of the biggest things companies are talking about, REITs are talking about, is ESG, right? Environmental sustainability, and it's a big thing, right? And as you said, if you want the REITs to invest in you and fund you, then they're going to ask you to do things in a particular way, because they want, again, it's all about transparency and openness of information, right? This has, I think, been one of major roadblocks in construction and infrastructure projects in India, is people have tend to, hold on to information, right? Which is, the old days, but today things are different, right? And things are changing, right? People are realizing values. They're looking at reliability in planning and delivery, not just in the phase, but also in the planning phase, right? So today, project planning has also taken on a significant change, right? That's one benefit of BIM-based modeling we see is in 4D planning, right? Is so that, using solutions like Bentley Synchro, you can take your 3D models created with any BIM software, and you can model and plan, how is the construction going to be sequenced? How is it going to look at different phases of construction? And I know there are a lot of examples around the world, right? I can give you an example from, a project in Singapore. It's the Changi Airport's jewel, right? This was one of the crown jewels of Singapore from an infrastructure development. And the company which actually did the construction used 4D construction planning to prove to Changi Airport that they should get the project, even though they were not the cheapest bidder. But they showed that they would deliver it 5 months before anybody else. And 5 months, because the jewel is a commercial property, that 5 months translated to actually better commercial value to the airport, right? So, and they were actually, okay, so that was the plan. They delivered 4 months in advance, right? They did. So, the technology was one piece, but the technology helped drive thinking. Thought that, okay, let me, how do I convince my value to an infrastructure owner, right? What drives that owner? What was important for the owner? For the owner, having the facility 5 months earlier or 4 months earlier meant a lot more than having it, a little cheaper.
Yeah.
So this is where technology can change things and change thinking. So, but I'm sure that, as you say, right, very correctly, as international players come into the market, new thinking comes in. We also see a lot of engineers and from India who've gone overseas, studied, worked, and then come back, right? Bring their thought leadership, to bring their ideas, right? The founders or co-founders and owners of Nadi Technologies, have been through a similar experience. And when I talk to them, it's so refreshing, right? They were able to take best practices they learned in North America in their education and in their working environment. They came back to India via an incubation cell at IIT Kanpur. They were able to take and actually build a whole consulting and a software practice around in uplifting and upskilling the lean construction methodology in India, right? So I'm encouraged. I'm excited that together with the changes happening in India, the change of technology, with our continued focus on the Indian market and our growing Bentley family in India, we are well poised to really support the Indian infrastructure industry as they continue on a path of digital transformation.
Yeah, I think it seems to be a no-brainer coming in, at this point in time. And so like I said recently, let's get digital because it's logical. So
yes.
Thank you very much, Kaushik, for this interview. Very, very enlightening and very engaging. Thank you.
Much appreciated, and thank you for the time, and thank you for your continued support. And hopefully, the next one, we'll see how much we progress since today.
Sure. We'll
thank
connect.
You so much. Take care. Bye.